It all starts in about the year minus 9000 with a war. How could it be any different with a timeline based on Noxian history? Namely, with a war between the inhabitants of Ionia and a race of sky giants, whatever they are supposed to be. But by the intervention of the Vastaya Shire, they were defeated. 1,000 years later, the three sisters, Avarosa, Zrilda, and Lysandra, fight against each other, because Lysandra has allied herself with the Watchers. In the final battle, Lysandra does the old switcheroo and turns against the Watchers and buries them in true ice, where they sleep to this day. Another 2,000 years later, settlers from a region far to the east reach the coast of Valoran and Shurima. And by Shurima I don't mean the region but the continent. These settlers come from a country that is not shown on the map, possibly Camavor, where Diego is from. Since the aspects of Targon have noticed that a great war is looming, they give Shurima the opportunity to create mighty god warriors. Of course, in their endless wisdom, the aspects know that nothing bad can happen when you give humans extreme power. For the next 3,000 years, the Shuriman Empire is slowly destroyed because they do everything they can to not be destroyed, such as forcibly holding outer provinces that want to leave the empire in the empire. I am referring specifically to Icathia, who fought the Shuriman Empire for their independence, and they wanted to use the Void as a secret weapon. And that kinda worked. The Void destroyed the Shuriman army, so it was basically a success. Except for the fact that the Icathian army, Icathia, and all the land around is destroyed and infested by the Void, and they unleashed one of the greatest horrors imaginable on Runeterra. This whole mess happened somewhere around the year minus 2500. Then Shurima fucked up some more by botching the ascension of their Emperor Azir, by letting a slave friend named Xerath push Azir out of the sunbeam emitted from the sun disk and stand inside it himself. He became pure energy and probably the most powerful mage in Shurima, but the process destroyed the capital city. And then there are the god warriors who go mad without an empire to protect. They raise armies for themselves and fight each other until they are locked up in weapons. They are now called the Darkin. Then a brutal warlord named San Uzal dies. But instead of the afterlife, where he feasts with the gods and is served by the souls of those he killed, which was his belief of the afterlife, he just landed inside an infinite nothingness, where dying souls end up until they fade out of existence. But he is too determined to just fade away, so he learns the language of the dead and to manipulate this realm. Around the year minus 400, he gets so powerful that he is able to send a message to some mages in the real world, who revive him. But San Uzal is no more. He's now named Mordekaiser, which is San Uzal in the language of the dead. He starts conquering the world again, but this time he kills as many people as possible, until he was defeated by a coalition of the Noxide tribes. But this was part of his plan, since now he returned into the Death Realm, and there were millions of souls waiting for him and fully under his command. Diego turns the Blessed Isles into the Shadow Isles in the Runation, which everybody should know by now, and the artifacts from the Blessed Isles spread throughout the world and trigger the Rune War, which leads to the Noxide tribes uniting. This is the year 0 of the Noxian calendar. About 300 years later, in the year 292, Demacia rises and Noxus becomes an empire, with an elected Grand General at the helm. Another 400 years later, a large part of the old zone was flooded accidentally, and the first settlement was built on the Serpent Isles, which will later become the city of Bilgewater. 200 years later, and almost in the present, the large-scale invasion of Ionia failed because of a few trees, and as a result, Jericho Thrain deposes the old General Borim Darkwill and makes fundamental changes to the Society of Noxus, which is the newest event on the timeline.